Hello, beautiful people. You know the title. So I have just finished this book called A New Earth, Awakening to Your Life's Purpose by Eckhart Tolle, I think is how you pronounce it. Um, I'm making this video primarily so that I remember what I just read. I'm currently sitting on my deck in the sunrise. Don't mind that. That's a pot. I have to clean that. It's fine. Yeah, I want to try and remember a lot of this stuff, so I think it's better to teach it or talk about it. And so hopefully that helps me remember it all. So I took notes. Basically, Eckhart Tolle is a German spiritualist. I think he was a scientist at one point, but then he left all of that to sort of teach concepts. And so basically this book focuses on consciousness. It really centers on this. Something that's interesting is I've been reading quite a few of these different spiritual philosophy type things recently. And no matter whether it's ancient Toltec, Indo-American wisdom, or it's Greco-Roman Stoicism, or it's Chinese Taoism, every single one of these philosophies and things teaches about living in the present and being in the moment and not worrying about the past or the future. And so he very much believes that kind of stuff and views consciousness as something that you need to nurture and grow. He said that consciousness is the universe looking at itself. And so from his point of view, consciousness is kind of this all-encompassing thing. And he views the whole purpose of the universe and life is to develop consciousness, to view itself. He has some interesting beliefs that I don't know if I 100% agree with, but I think I understand what he's saying. He's basically saying that every single human on the planet is just consciousness, but we get wrapped up in things like our ego and the stories and the labels that we give ourselves. And these stories and our ego prevent us from truly enjoying life and truly appreciating what we have and where we are, which I would agree with. So the idea is to move past materialism and focus on your breath and your current who you are, what you're doing in the moment. So being totally present. So for example, I should be totally present making this video. I should not be worrying about things. I should be here, focusing on my breath, focusing on what I'm saying. And through that, I can attain this, what he calls enlightenment. And I know that term gets thrown around very willy-nilly, but he is talking about enlightenment in terms of being truly conscious. One of the big things that he talks about is human ego, and how our ego is this emotional, irrational thing inside of us. It's the voice inside our head saying, do this, do that, worry about this, focus on this. And those voices and that ego is inherently destructive, and it's not helping us and it's holding us back. Whereas if we can nurture our consciousness and grow our consciousness to only focus on the here and now and the goals that we set ourselves, it'll be infinitely better for us in the long run. So the next part of the book, the middle part of the book, talks about role playing. And he's not talking about role playing in the bedroom or role playing in that kind of sense. He's talking about how our ego plays a role to get what it wants. And so this kind of focuses on if you've ever met somebody who just kind of always plays the victim card, and they're I'm just a victim, the world's out to get me. Of course, I missed the bus, the bus driver probably hates me, I get on there every day, and he knew that I was running late or whatever, and he hates me. So that kind of idea is our ego writing a story for us and putting us in the role. It's putting us into an acting role, And that's and Eckhart, Mr. Tolle, Dr. Tolle, I don't know if he's a doctor, but the author believes that that kind of ideology is inherently destructive, and it allows our ego to just sort of run riot over us and completely control what we see. Um, because our ego just wants, like, it wants recognition, it wants praise. And if you think about it, like, it makes sense. Like, you think of like, I asked this question on TikTok a while ago about why is it that we enjoy listening to a sad song, like a song that makes us feel sad somehow kind of makes us feel good, like we enjoy reveling in our sadness. And that is the ego, wanting to feel like, oh, I'm so cast out, I'm so downtrodden, I'm such a victim. That is our ego sort of living that role. And it's doing that to get something. Like, it's doing that to achieve its goal and its satisfaction. Um, and it's telling a story about our life, essentially. And so the author is saying that that is really destructive, and it's really damaging to who we are and what we're doing. And it actually makes our life infinitely worse. Whereas if you're living in the present and you're in the moment and you're enjoying and you're taking in your breath and you're allowing happiness to flow out of you instead of trying to find things to make you happy, then you become kind of unstoppable in a sense. So he says that the solution to role playing is being conscious and doing what is required in any situation without it becoming a role. So the idea of like, oh, and he also like goes on and talks about like role playing as like a parent. So like a parent fulfills a role to the child, but the problem is that that role gets ahead of us, and the child then sees you as that role and thinks that you will only love them based on doing the right thing. And so when they screw up or something, they're really nervous and they freak out and they're worried that their parent is not going to like them or anything, isn't going to love them, because the child has like broken their role and the role that they see the parent having. And so he like goes on and talks about stuff like that. And he talks about like all different kinds of roles and how we experience things like that. So I don't know. It was interesting. I liked that part of it for sure. The next big thing, and probably his most controversial thing, is called pain body. Um, and so he's I've looked online, and he gotten a bit of trouble, or he's been like criticized for this concept. So the pain body is basically, it's like your body's reaction to emotions. This often relates to like trauma or like physical pain or things that you encountered as a child. And he says that basically, like, as a child, when you encounter something that's like really painful, your reaction is to kind of just like shut down and shut off. And he says that many adults don't lose that habit and they continue doing this. Um, and so he says that the pain body, it's this energy that is associated with emotions and with certain situations. So if you were abused as a child, anything that reminds you of that abuse will create this like emotionally charged response in your body, and it's this negative energy that can affect you. um he's said some controversial things, like he said that like this could be one of the causes for like cancer and different kinds of diseases and things like that. But he's also related it to like an entire country or an entire group of people can experience a pain body in the author's view. And so he said, like, he's talked about like Native Americans and the sort of Native American genocide that happened during colonization. And he said that like every Native person experiences this pain body, um, and that these things are kind of like universally triggering to every person in this community. And he talked about like the Holocaust survivors and various things like that. And so some people disagree with him, some people agree with him. I don't really have an opinion on that. Um, but I do agree with the idea of like certain things definitely trigger people. And, the trauma that we experience from the past affects us. And I like what he says when he talks about how this trauma and this pain that we encounter is another ego response. It's your ego, again, playing the playing the victim and feeling really bad about a trauma. Like, I know in my experience, like the traumas I have incurred, when I am like triggered by those traumas, it's very much like my ego being like, oh, like I'm so triggered by this. And it's basically like my ego is opening up a door, allowing me to feel these horrible emotions and feel awful, when if I'm just living in the present and I'm not allowing that ego to open that door, then it doesn't affect me. And so I do like what he said there. Yeah, so that's like probably a big part of it. It's interesting. He brings up the idea of non-resistance, and this goes back to like Taoism and kind of what I've been thinking of for a while about this kind of stuff, and how non-resistance is like, again, not allowing things to affect you, staying in the present moment, going with the flow. It goes back to that idea of like we have no control over our lives and what we're doing. And so if you're going to find true happiness and joy, it needs to come from within your body. It can't come from external circumstances and things. And when an external circumstance shows up and starts to affect us, if we can react in a way of non-resistance, then nothing can like touch us. Nothing can affect us. And he asks the question, do I want the present moment to be my friend or my enemy? Which I like. So I wrote that down. Yeah, he said that there are three ways in which the ego will treat the present moment: as a means to an end, as an obstacle, or as an enemy. And so if we're living in the moment, we kind of destroy the ego because it can't use those tools to sort of like make you anxious or make you angry or put some kind of narrative in your head. So I think it's interesting. The thing that I liked the most about this book is he talks about the three modalities of awakened doing. And these are the three sort of things that we should keep in our minds in the present while we're living in the present, in order to basically carry out your day. So it's like if you're not relying on the ego and all of these toxic emotions and feelings to deal with your present day, what are you doing? And you're using these three things. So he said acceptance. And so acceptance is for tasks that are unenjoyable, but you've got to complete them. The moment requires you to act, and so you do it willingly. So this is like when you're doing a task in the day and you're just like, oh, I don't like doing this. Instead of getting emotional about it or sad or angry about it, you just sort of accept that it's happening. Again, non-resistance. You accept that it's happening. You accept that you need to do it, and you just carry it out. There isn't any, you don't allow the ego to like create a narrative in your head about like, oh, how this is so awful and so difficult and all this other stuff. The next one is enjoyment, and that's finding joy in the present moment. It's not the same as wanting. And so he said it's like when you take a nice breath and you do a meditation and you're just happy to be here, that's enjoyment. That's just allowing whatever you're doing, whether it's washing the dishes or doing the laundry, going to work, walking to a coffee shop, whatever it is, you're just allowing that enjoyment of the present moment to be there. And again, that eliminates ego and it just chills you out, honestly. And then the final one he says is enthusiasm. And so this one, it's centered around that whole concept of enjoyment that I just talked about, but it's with this added element of you are doing something, you are working towards like a goal or a vision you have. And he makes the distinction that like working towards this goal or this vision, you're not thinking about the future, because as soon as you think of goal, you think of the future and you think of like that kind of thing. He says, no. The goal has to be a reality within you already. And so I'm going to be honest, I don't quite understand this yet. I'm going to look into it and do some research on it. But I think it means like the goal you're trying to achieve. So if your goal is like you want to make other people feel good, help them realize their true potential, like all this other stuff, you need to realize that like the goal inside of you is already there. And so, yeah, like I said, I don't quite understand that yet, but it sounds really good. And the last thing I thought of note in this book is he talks about frequency holders. And these are people who generate consciousness through the activities of daily life, through their interactions with others, as well as through just being. And so these are the people that kind of like uplift, and they help bring more people into this like conscious living in the moment state. And they're being absolutely present in whatever they do. So he's like saying that these people are basically like the ideal people, the ones who, they are the Zen masters. They are the ones who have become conscious, who are living in the moment, who aren't allowing their ego to pollute what they're doing or what they think. And so, yeah, I think we should all try to be frequency holders, or at least the author does. So, guys, thank you. That is my thoughts on A New Earth, Awakening to Your Life's Purpose. 6 months ago, I would have read something like this and thought like, oh my gosh, like what is this spiritual mumbo jumbo, ridiculous pseudopsychology? But today I accept it a lot more. I think living in the moment is so important. I think it's really important to stop worrying and regretting the past and freaking out about the future, because it doesn't exist. And I think it's a really neat new level of spirituality and how you see yourself. So yeah, give it a read if you think. If you've read it, let me know your thoughts. If you don't want to read it, just let me know your thoughts on what I've just said. Agree, disagree. I'm interested in your conversation. But I hope you have a beautiful day, and I will talk to you tomorrow.